Hello everyone and welcome. It is Flame once again from Team Legends and welcome back to another Union Arena deck discussion video. Continuing from where we left off in the last video, we will be going over the second purple deck in the set of Hunter x Hunter, and if you did miss the Zolik family video, I highly recommend checking it out. As always, if you do enjoy the video, please leave a like and a comment down below, and without further ado, I introduce to you Purple Phantom Troupe. Purple Phantom Troupe was the second purple deck in the set of Hunter x Hunter when the game first came out in 2024. This deck was a headache. It was a mess. No one really knew what Phantom Troupe was when it first came out, whether it was a tall deck that tried to get up to 6 required energy, or if it was a rush deck that just focused on the raid Crollo. It was such a headache, in fact, that a lot of people didn't opt to play a pure Phantom Troupe when the deck first came out. They instead decided to play it as a Crollo Illumi hybrid deck, which saw the most amount of success in the early showings of the game. With so much disarray, we weren't exactly sure what the support that Phantom Troupe was going to be getting in Volume 2, whether it was to bolster it up to that 6 required energy threshold or keep it as a rush deck, and the support we got didn't answer the question. It wasn't exactly the support we were looking for. We got a couple new cards which were good for the deck, but we also got a couple other ones that were seemingly forgotten when the set first came out. This deck was definitely one of the tougher ones to build a coherent strategy around, as there were a lot of avenues, but instead we are planning on playing this in the pure rush version of Phantom Troupe thanks to the new support it got in Hunter x Hunter Volume 2. We'll now go over the card by card discussion of this deck and the breakdown as to the strategy and the inclusion of all the cards in this deck, and if you want to skip ahead at any point, there will be timestamps listed below in the description that you can skip ahead to a randomly generated 3-round tournament. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our deck discussion. As always, we like to lead things off with the cards that really don't need any explanation as to why they're here. Starting things off, of course, is your staple draw discard. 4 copies of the 0/1 Finks. He's a draw discard, he's got an active trigger, and he's a Phantom Troupe affinity by name. He's in here at 4 copies. Next up, of course, is 4 copies of the main raid target in the deck. 4 copies of the 0/1 Crollo. He's in the deck at 4 as a 0-cost energy card. He's a raid target. He's got a get trigger. He's in here at the maximum. Rounding out our 0 totals, we are going to be playing 3 copies of the 0/1 Pakanoda. Now, this card is unique in terms of Phantom Troupe cards, as she's the only one that doesn't have a when played ability in this deck. She instead has an ability that when sidelined, you're able to draw a card, making her the ideal blocker in any situation. You can also do some cheeky shenanigans with other cards that forcibly sideline her, but we'll get to those in a moment. As it stands right now, she's in the deck at just 3 copies. Next up, we will be moving into our 1-cost cards. This deck is playing a few more 1-cost cards than normal, but you are able to do so because it is a little bit of a quicker deck, and the fact that it's got the purple backing for it, so you're going to want as many different cards you can play back off of the purple color trigger as possible. Starting things off is one of our first cards in our brand new Volume 2 support, 4 copies of the 1/1 Cortopi. This card has found its way into the deck as a mandatory 4 of, not just because of the fact it is a 1 required energy and the fact that it has a good trigger, but it also has a good ability. When played, you may reveal 1 Phantom Troupe affinity card in your hand. If you do, you place up to 1 card with the same card name as the revealed card from your sideline on the top of your deck. This card can be used in multiple different fashions, but you're really going to be using it to recur a lot of your powerful cards, whether it is the 5/1 Hisoka if you have 1 remaining in hand, or the more likely ability is that you'll be reviewing a Crollo in your hand and being able to play back your raid on the top of your deck so you can draw it again next turn. The flexibility of this card's ability is very powerful, and you're going to want to see it more times than not, and the fact that it is a 1-cost energy card means that we're going to want to play it as much as possible. He's in the deck at 4 copies. Our other 2 1-cost cards in the deck is going to be 2 copies of the 1-cost Bonolanov and Cortopi. This card was questionable when we put it in the deck. It is a 1-cost card, and it does have 2500 BP, which really is nothing to scoff at, but its ability truly lies in its when played ability. When played, you can choose one of the following. You can choose up to 1 character on your field and move it to the other line, or you may choose 1 character on both your front line and energy line and swap them. These types of cards are generally played in purple decks because of the fact you're able to play them back off of purple color triggers. If you hit a color trigger out of life, you are able to play this card back from your sideline, and you can move something from your energy line to your front line, or you can swap it so you can block with a more suitable character. I have seen the incorporation of cards of this caliber in similar purple decks, such as the White Purity style deck from Kagurabachi. They play a similar card that does some energy line and frontline shenanigans, so we thought we'd give this a try and play it in the deck at 2, which is going to be a recurring theme that you're going to see a lot throughout this deck discussion. We're not going to be playing any Phantom Troops at less than 2 copies, so they are always going to be live if you have the core Topi that you can reveal one in hand, and if you have one residing in your sideline, you can play it back on the top of your deck. This card can definitely be swapped in and out of the deck depending on how aggressively you want to push early. We are going to be trying a more rush heavy strategy, so we are going to try it at 2 copies. Moving right along to our 2 cost cards, we are going to be playing 6 total 2 cost cards in the deck. Starting things off, of course, 2 copies of the 2 cost Shizuku. The inclusion of Shizuku in this deck is mainly just used for more draw power. When played, you're able to just straight draw a card off of her. She's not exactly the biggest body, so she's not going to be doing a lot of aggressive swings. She is a 2 required energy, so if you do happen to hit her in the sideline and trip a purple color trigger, you can play her back out of your sideline, draw a card, and she provides a free body. The only thing keeping her from being played of at more in the deck is the fact she does not have a trigger. We're only going to play her at 2 copies. Our other 2 cost cards in the deck, of course, is 4 copies of the color of the deck, the 2 cost Crollo. This card's going to be the one that does a lot of your key searching for other troop members, case in point of his ability. When played, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You reveal up to 1 Phantom Troupe affinity card other than Crollo among those 4 cards and add it to your hand. The remaining cards that you don't grab go to the bottom of your deck in any order, and if you do happen to add a card off of his effect, you place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. The biggest downside, of course, of this card is the fact that you're not able to search a Crollo through his ability, so if you do find a raid in those 4 cards, you're not going to be able to grab it, and instead will go to the bottom of your deck. However, this ability does help for early game pressure, as you're able to find just about any card you need. You can find some of those small cards that you need to bridge the gap, you could find a double energy to get up to the required 5 that you might need to get some of your plays, or you can find the big power threat outside of the Crollo that you can save for later on in the game. I do really enjoy the design of this card, especially because of the fact he is a 2 required energy, so if you have one residing in your sideline, you're able to play it back off of another colored trigger that you hit, so you're able to get even more advantage during your opponent's turn. It's just a really fun card to have, and being a color trigger in the color of purple, you're going to want to see it as frequently as possible, so it's no surprise he's in here at the maximum of 4 copies. Moving out of our 2 cost cards, it's time to get into our 3 cost cards. Leading things off is 2 copies of the 3/1 Nobunaga. This card is only going to be played in at 2 of the deck because it does have some niche instances when it pops up. It doesn't have a trigger, so you really don't want to max it out and screw your life. His ability is, when played, if you have 3 or more other Phantom Troupe affinity cards on your field, you choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line. It loses 1000 BP until the end of the turn. He is a nice character to also have around to use in tandem with the special in the deck, but we'll get to that here later on. Another 3 cost card that we're going to be playing in this deck is our main double energy generator of the deck, 4 copies of the 3 cost double energy generating Franklin. Franklin's ability is very simple. When played, all characters on your opponent's front line lose 500 BP until the end of the turn. Similar to the Nobunaga that we just got done discussing, Franklin is really going to be used to drop the BP of the characters on your opponent's front line to small enough ranges that a lot of your Phantom Troupe cards won't have a problem hitting over them. Normally, a lot of the Phantom Troupe's ability revolves around the Crollos in the deck, but if you're able to utilize Franklin and Nobunaga to their fullest, you're actually able to get a couple extra swings with some of your smaller characters. He is the only double energy generating card we are playing in this deck, so we're going to play him at the maximum of 4, as we are going to try to get up to a required 5 energy at least once throughout our time playing. Rounding out our 3 cost cards, we are going to be playing 4 copies of the 3/1 Shalnark. Now, this card is very powerful. It is very versatile, and really is no surprise why it's in here at 4 copies. His ability is, when played, you play up to 1 character with 3 or less required energy, 1 AP cost, and Phantom Troupe affinity other than Shalnark from your sideline set to resting on your field. At the start of the end phase, sideline that character. The reason this card is so powerful is the fact you were able to play every single card that we just got done mentioning. You can play back any character you need to either sap something of 1000 BP, draw you an extra card, search through your deck a little bit more, or provide an extra raid target if you play back the 0/1 Crollo. Even his ability that the card gets sidelined at the end of the turn is beneficial, as you can also play back a 0/1 Pakanoda, and at the end of the turn you can get her sidelined and you still draw a card through her effect. The versatility that this card brings to the Phantom Troupe deck is insane. If you are not playing Shalnark at the maximum of 4 copies, you really can't make the most of all of the cards in your deck. He can bring back almost anything and get you out of almost every scenario. And the fact that the longer he remains on your field, the more powerful he becomes when used in tandem with the Raid, Crollo, or any other card's ability that lets you use characters when played effects. Overall, this is such a powerful card in the deck, and it's no surprise that we're going to see it at the maximum of 4 copies. Moving out of our 3 cost cards, it is time to get to the main power of the deck, the cards that are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, starting things off with our second brand new support card out of Volume 2, 3 copies of the 4/1 Crollo. We're only going to be playing this card at 3 because he has a get trigger, so we're always going to be able to find him, but his ability is crazy. This card essentially works the exact same way as the aforementioned purple color in the deck. When played, you're able to look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You reveal up to 1 Phantom Troupe affinity card among them and add it to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. If you add a card to your hand, you place 1 card into the sideline. Basically, it's the same thing as the color, although it's a little bit stronger, as it doesn't limit you to finding a Crollo in your deck, so you're able to find a Raid if you turn one over in those 4 cards. However, his ability keeps going. If you place a Phantom Troupe affinity card with 3 or less required energy other than Crollo into your sideline with this ability, this character may activate all of the cards when played abilities. That extra line of text makes this card so valuable for the deck. You're not only able to search through your deck to find any Phantom Troupe card you want, but if you have one in your hand, you can essentially toss it to the sideline off its ability and get its when played ability without wasting an action point. This means that you're able to pitch off, say, a Bonolanov and Kortopi and move some cards around. You're able to pitch a Shizuku to draw a card. You can even pitch a Shalnark off and utilize his ability to play back another character from your sideline and keep your plays going. We are only going to be playing this card at 3 copies in the deck. The only reason is we wanted to make room for a lot more Phantom Troupe cards by name. It's not too detrimental because the card does have the get trigger, so you're able to find it if you trip it out of life, and the more Crollos you have in the deck, the better. But we wanted to make this deck as versatile as possible to give it a lot of different avenues to play, and we just didn't have enough room to play this card at 4. Our other 4 cost card, of course, is the main Raid in the deck, 4 copies of the 4/1 Raid Crollo. This card is really where all the power of your deck is going to come from, as he gets a lot of your plays going and utilizes all of those when played abilities on all your Phantom Troupe cards. He has impact at a base. When played, you choose up to 1 character with Phantom Troupe affinity on your field other than Crollo and activate its when played ability. This card can essentially do anything as soon as it is played, provided you have the right Phantom Troupe cards on your field. You're able to draw discard, you can move cards, you can draw straight cards, you can reduce BP of characters on your opponent's field, or you can even hand loop them courtesy of the next card that we'll be getting into here in a moment. He is the only Raid in the deck and is the sole power of the deck, so we're playing him at a maximum of 4 copies. The last card that we're going to be getting into is our last brand new support card courtesy of Volume 2, 2 copies of the 5 cost Hisoka. The Hisoka only being a 2 in the deck means that we don't have to play as many double energy generators as we previously would to play the other Hisoka that was back in Volume 1 at a 6 required energy and 2 action cost card. His ability is when played, if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their hand, your opponent places 1 card from their hand into their sideline. Now, as we just mentioned with the Raid Crollo, you are able to utilize this ability more than once a turn if the Hisoka sticks around. You can play him on the turn, and then you're able to rip a card out of the hand, and if you raid a Crollo in the same turn, you're able to rip another card in the hand, provided they have 3 or more cards. The earlier you're able to drop Hisoka in the game, the better off you are, as you're wanting to keep your opponent off of as many resources as possible. On top of his 4000 BP body, which means he can stand on his own, his active trigger means he's pretty good out of life. You're going to want to find this card more frequently than not, but you really don't want to play it at any more than 2 because you're really going to be taken away from the rush strategy that we have going for the deck, so we're really going to only try it at 2 and see how well it goes. One of the last cards that we'll really be touching on here is the special for the deck, 4 copies of the 3 cost special card, Skill Hunter Bandit Secret. This card is interesting to say the least. It is probably one of the weakest specials that we've seen in all the Hunter x Hunter decks that we've gone through at this point, but it's not exactly the worst special and does have its uses. You choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and it loses 3000 BP until the end of the turn. If Crollo is on your field, choose up to 1 character with 3 or less required energy and Phantom Troupe affinity on your field other than Crollo and activate its when played ability. This card on its own cannot out any character with 4000 BP, however, if used properly and in tandem with other Phantom Troupe cards, you are able to do so. If you use it and Nobunaga is existing on your board, you're able to make it lose its last 1000 BP and essentially will sideline the character due to game rule. You can also use it in tandem with the Shalnark to play back a Nobunaga and make it lose its last 1000 BP, or you can use it with Franklin's ability to make every character on your opponent's front line lose 500. The fact that this card can make a character lose 3000 BP on top of activating as a secondary Crollo to utilize more of your troops ability is really powerful for the deck and really helps the deck get going, and obviously with it being a special trigger, you're going to want to see it as much as possible. And of course, the last cards we'll be touching on is 4 copies of our Underworld Resident, your AP Flipper, your final, really no explanation as to why it's in the deck. So once again, here's the full breakdown of the card by card of our deck and the ratios for all the cards that we'll be playing in our randomly generated 3-round tournament. I'm honestly really excited to see how well this deck will do, and I hope you are as well. Let's get into the games. With our decks all queued up, it is time once again to turn our attention back to the all-knowing Wheel of Union Arena decks to see who it will be to take on our Phantom Troupe deck in the opening round of our randomly generated 3-round tournament. And an interesting matchup to start here in round number 1, it will be the blue Nanami Sukuna deck from Jujutsu Kaisen with a couple of brand new support cards thanks to Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 2. Now, this is an interesting matchup to take on Phantom Troupe here in the opening round. The Sukuna Nanami deck is a deck that can go fast, but also likes the longer drawn-out game. The more cards that you have in your sideline and the fewer cards you have in your deck, the stronger the Nanami deck becomes. Thanks to the raid back in Volume 1, the Nanami, when you have the adequate number of cards in your deck remaining, gets impact and damage too if you have 15 or less cards. So the faster you can get through your deck, the better off you are, but it doesn't really get hindered by the fact that the game can go on a lot quicker thanks to the Raid Sukuna from the Jujutsu Kaisen starter deck. Able to win the die roll, and we are going first, we're going to be generating a lot of advantage starting things off with a couple draw discarding things and the straight draw Suzuku. The faster we can get to our Crollos in this deck, obviously the better. We're going to be seeing one of our brand new Crollos being tripped out of life, of course with that get trigger, so we have him in our hand pretty early. Already our hand looking very full and a lot of resources and avenues to go through. First playing of the color Crollo, which will grab a Hisoka from our deck so we can use him for later. And of course, if you add a card off of the Crollo's ability, you have to discard. Making the choice to discard a Finks early on here to get him in the sideline, of course, is a valuable target off of a purple colored trigger, and now options aplenty. We're going to be playing a Shalnark on the front line, which will use his ability to play back another Phantom Troupe affinity from the sideline. We're going to go after the Finks that we just pitched, all 4 Finks in rotation, so we are able to draw discard here. We're going to be deciding to pitch off the Franklin into the sideline. It is now at this point that we're able to raid the Crollo and use his ability to copy a when played ability of any of our troop members, whether to draw a few cards or play one back, opting to go for the Shizuku and swinging for impact, tripping a Raid Nanami out of life, the brand new raid out of Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 2. The Finks obviously gets sidelined due to the end of the turn thanks to the Shalnark's effect, and it is now time to defend here as we're already down on life, 6 life to 5, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better here as a Sukuna drops, able to draw 2 and pitch 1, and now a Raid Nanami, which will target our Crollo, making it so that he can't attack on the next turn. Nanami will swing and will be able to mill a card off the sideline, hitting an active trigger. Shalnark should stop the rest of the attacks, and it will, but still down on life here, and it needs to find a comeback pretty quickly, as we want to get in control of this game sooner rather than later. I'm going to play a copy of Skill Hunter Bandit Secrets, which will choose the Sukuna to drop it by 3000 BP, then copy the ability of any troop member on our field. We're going to copy the ability of Shalnark to play back the Franklin from our sideline. Franklin will make everything on the front line lose another 500 BP, and now generating 5 energy, we are able to play the Crollo to our front line, essentially going off 4 deep into the deck again, opting to choose the color over the Shalnark and adding it to our hand, then pitching another card out of our hand. We're going to pitch Franklin once again, making everything else lose another 500, thus sidelining the Sukuna. Now we're going to be able to play Hisoka for the first time, and since our opponent has 3 cards in hand, they mandatorily have to discard a card from their hand, and we're able to swing some bodies in. Shalnark will be able to swing over anything on the front line because of the fact that everything is 3000 or less BP thanks to the double activation of Franklin, and the Crollo not being able to attack means that we're only going to be able to get 1 swing in this turn. See the Nanami being played, able to mill a card to the sideline. Unfortunate, it's a special at that, but another Raid Nanami will stun the Crollo once again. 4 bodies on 4 bodies. The first Nanami swings into mill a card, going to hit an active out of life, choosing to give the active trigger boost to the Hisoka, which will block the next attack. Sukuna will swing in with only 4000 because they haven't found any fingers in the sideline thus far, which is very fortuitous for us because the more fingers they have, the worse position we're going to be in as this game progresses. Choosing to play the Krollo color once again, going another 4 deep, looking over our options, going to grab a Bonolanov and Kortopi to our hand, then pitch a card out of hand, another color Krollo. Going to play that Krollo back on the front line and go another top 4, grab the Raid Krollo of those 4 cards because we are able to do so thanks to the new support in Volume 2. And choosing to discard, we have the Kortopi in hand, also the Bonolanov and Kortopi. Going to pitch the Kortopi off, revealing the Raid Krollo we have in our hand. Is going to stack the other 4/1 Krollo back on the top of the deck. And now we're going to raid our Krollo, which will copy the ability of any of our troop members on the front line, choosing Shizuku to draw the card to get our Krollo back in hand, ready for next turn. Hisoka will swing first with 4,000 on the front line, will be blocked out by Nanami, which will mill a card and give the Sukuna a 1,000 BP boost, which will block the next attack of the Krollo coming in, and of course our Krollo stunned from the raid Nanami last turn isn't able to swing, and we find ourselves back in the same position, down by a couple of life. Nanami going pretty quickly here, thinning through their deck a little bit faster, but because they are able to do so and not really many resources here, only going to play a Yuji on the front line instead of really able to go more aggressively on the swings. Checking the sideline here to make sure they have the right number of cards left in their deck. It's going to swing and mill a card, which will trip an active out of life once again. Will give the active boost to the Hisoka. And another Nanami will swing. They're very close to the 15 cards remaining in order to get that boost. We'll block out with the Shalnark and we'll pass turn. Double Impact Krollo will be coming in on this turn here, as none of them are stunned so far from the Nanamis. They're all free to attack. And we're able to take an extra draw here as we have a couple Underworld residents residing in our hand. I'm going to play a copy of Krollo back on the front line thanks to the Kortopi, stacking it back on the top of our deck. Going to go another 4 in the deck and finding a raid target, a 0-cost Krollo, pitching the Bonolanov and Kortopi on the sideline and swapping our Krollos around. We'll now be able to raid Krollo once again and copy the ability of any of our troop members. Since their opponent only has 1 card in hand, we're going to go for Finks to draw a discard and send that Krollo right to the sideline. This is 3 impacts swinging in, which is very reminiscent of our Zoldyck family versus Kisho matchup in the last video, and it's nice to be on the dishing out end instead of the receiving end this time, as we've quickly now swung the game back in our favor and dealt 4 damage in that one turn to get in the commanding position with triple impact impending on the next turn. We just have to survive. Opponent is going to take the extra draw here, and they are at the remaining 15 cards in the deck, so all of their Nanami effects will be pretty powerful, but not seeing any of the old raid Nanamis in the hand, which is very fortuitous for us. Use a copy of Domain Expansion and then Ratio Technique to out one of our Krollos. Going to go after the one without the color underneath it, or put it up back on the bottom of the deck, as that's what Ratio Technique does. It doesn't sideline, it puts it on the bottom of the deck. That one AP stranded there is going to be battling in. The Nanami will swing to mill another card, which will take care of the Hisoka. Another Nanami will swing through, and it's whether to block now or save the damage. And I think we're going to block this one with the Krollo. Now the Sukuna swings in, hits a special out of life, which is going to save us the last bit of damage, keeping 1 impact remaining on the board, and now it should just be a full back row push to solidify that last bit of damage. Play the Nobunaga to just drop the Sukuna, swinging in for the last impact, and that will do it for game 1. Well, the first round out of the way, and that's a pretty good showing and a start for our Phantom Troupe deck, going 1-0 against the Nanami Sukuna deck, so feeling pretty good moving into round number 2, but might not be the case as we're going to be going against a different matchup instead of speed versus speed. This time it is speed versus power, as it is our Phantom Troupe deck taking on the Lancelot deck from Code Geass. Even though the Lancelot deck is a bit of an older deck, it still has destructive capabilities in the 8-drop Lancelot Air Cavalry. It's a 5,000 raid that costs 8 energy to play, has impact and damage 2 along with its 5,000 BP, and can instantly sideline any character of its choosing. The fact is that we have to get going on a quick enough start to keep the Lancelot from being dropped on the board comfortably. Unfortunately, not going to be seeing it here early on, as we have to take an extra draw for our first turn after mulliganing and still not finding a playable 0. Playing on the back foot here, we are able to draw a 0 here our second turn through, so establishing the energy line, but 1 turn back on Lancelot is definitely not the position we want it to be in, especially with our opponent now going double Cecile and generating 6 energy after their second turn of play. Going to play our first color Krollo on the back line, going to the top 4. We do see a Krollo among those 4 cards, unfortunately cannot grab it, and instead has to grab the Kortopi to our hand. And after adding a card off the Krollo, we have to discard. Going to pitch off the 4-cost Krollo, play Kortopi to reset it back on the top of our deck, revealing a Raid Krollo in hand. And now the choice is what to do with our last action point. We do have the Raid Krollo in hand, and it looks like we are going to be playing it. We're going to play it to the front line, but not able to copy any troop member's ability to their fullest extent, and it's forced to just swing in for 1 damage, hitting a green color trigger out of life, which will hit the Anya to draw our opponent a card and discard off their turn. Already playing a little bit on the back foot here, but dealing the first damage isn't the worst thing in the world. You can see a copy of Suzaku being played, which will draw our opponent a card. Going to play another one to draw them another card, and now generating 8 energy on the energy line. A whole Air Cavalry could be dropping here early, but instead it's going to be just a solid Lancelot, which is 5,000 and damage 2. That 5,000 BP will last all the way until our opponent's next turn, and we're going to take the damage 2 from the Lancelot, hitting a raid and an active trigger out of life. Going to be blocking out and hitting another active trigger as well. As quickly as we were ahead, now we find ourselves down 2 life and only 1 card on our front line to our opponent's full 4. Play the Nobunaga, which will drop the Lancelot down to 4,000, so it can't be a free blocker to our Impact Crollo. Play our new Crollo on the front line, going the top 4, finding a Franklin among those 4 cards and adding it to the hand, and then choosing what to discard to utilize its ability, as it is obviously going to be a Phantom Troupe member we're going to be pitching off the 4-1 Crollo. Going to pitch the Raid Crollo, so not able to use its ability, unfortunately. Underworld Resident will be playing the Franklin on the front line. And then we are choosing to raid the Crollo, which will be moved up to the front line, and copy the ability of the Bonolanov and Kortopi, which will move the Franklin back and pull it up to the front line. Swinging in for the first impact, we'll hit a Get Suzaku, and a Raid Air Cavalry has been added to our opponent's hand out of life. So we might be seeing this next turn, and well, that wouldn't exactly be a fun thing to face off against. We'll see if we can hold out against that. See it not only being played on the energy line, which fills our opponent's energy line up to 8 energy, on top of being able to draw and discard, and now here comes the first of the Air Cavalries, which will sideline one of our Crollos, going after the one without the color underneath it. Damage 2 will be swinging through, will be blocked by the Bonolanov and Kortopi. Impact damage 2 will be allowed through, and we're going to hit 2 cards with the trigger, an active trigger and a colored trigger for the Crollo. The active is going to be given as a boost to any one of our cards, and we're going to play the Bonolanov and Kortopi back, which will be able to swap the Nobunaga up to the front line as just a little bit stronger body in case we needed a block, but unfortunately we didn't. Already down now 2 life, only 2 life remaining here, and impending impact on our opponent's board. We're going to play the Shalnark from our hand set resting, and then playing the Finks back to try and draw us out of this predicament. Draw a discard and pitching off the Bonolanov and Kortopi, and now going to be played over the Finks. We're going to play Hisoka, which will force our opponent to discard a card to their sideline. Impact will not get through the 5,000. Our opponent choosing to sideline one of their characters to make room on the front line, blocking the Nobunaga with the Weenie instead of the Lancelot on the front line. So we'll see what they have planned for this, as only generating 5 energy thanks to the not only not being able to have a full energy line. Playing a copy of Cecile on the back row, and then a Euphemia, which will protect the Lancelots if she is moved up to the front line, but she's only going to be on the energy line here. Going to hit a nice special out of life, which will take out the Air Cavalry, so we're not going to be dead next turn due to the impending impact, as our deck does not really have the access to nullify impact. Move up our energy line as we're generating 3 energy. Playing a copy of Franklin, dropping everything by 500 BP, and then the Hisoka to force another card out of our opponent's hand. We'll swing first with the Hisoka at 4,000. He's going to hit a Varus out of life, which will take care of our Raid Crollo, unfortunately. Shalnark will be able to swing, which will be blocked by the Lancelot, and then the Bonolanov and Kortopi will take care of the Nonali. So it should be a full back row push from our opponent that should be able to seal the deal, but I think they're going to go for a little bit more style, as we see a Suzaku being played. It's generating 8 energy, so an Air Cavalry is all they need. Going to play Live, and then it's going to be unit maintenance to go to the top 5. Do they find an Air Cavalry? They do not. They find just a standard Lancelot, which will switch the action point back up, and then raiding the Lancelot for 5,000 and damage 2. Swinging in first with a damage 2, and at this point, we're just hoping for a lucky break. Not going to have it here, but that's going to do it for Game 2. Well, 2 rounds down and a 1-1 record is about par for the course for our Hunter x Hunter decks we've seen so far in our deck discussion, so we'll hope for the best for round 3, trying to go positive here, and we might have some luck here. It is going to be the purple Jinwoo deck, the mill version from Solo Leveling, which is a deck that goes a little bit slower in terms of getting going, as they want to have up to 20 cards in the sideline to make the full use of all their cards' abilities, and we're trying to take as much of an advantage as that as possible with our Phantom Troupe deck being a little bit quicker on the draw. The problem is now we have a dead card in our deck in the 5-cost Hisoka, because we really don't want to give our opponent as many cards into the sideline as they want, with him forcibly making our opponent discard a card from their hand into the sideline. That's just going to put fuel to the fire, so we might not be seeing any Hisokas being played here in Game 3. Both us and our opponents having to mulligan here for the opening draw. We've had to mulligan all 3 times here in our games with Phantom Troupe, which really shouldn't happen with a deck playing 11 zeros and 6 1-cost cards, but I digress. We're able to take the first move and draw a discard off the Finks, putting a Cortopia in the sideline. A good target off of a color trigger if we're able to find one out of life. Opponent goes for Esso, goes top 4, and able to find the Raid Jinwoo, and then pitching off an Esso into the sideline, getting her fuel into the sideline faster is better for the mill deck, as anytime you're able to grab her back to the hand, you're able to just draw and discard and send her right back into the sideline where she belongs. Able to get an early swing off of the Finks here and get early on life. We're going to move the Esso up to the front line. A Han Song-yi will allow our opponent to draw and discard, and then playing another one on the energy line. Esso, bigger than the Finks here, will be able to swing over and deal 1 damage right back in our face. But now it is time, and we have all 3 AP, that we're actually able to play a full turn with our Phantom Troupe deck, starting, of course, with the color Crollo. Going to add a Pakanoto, the top 4 cards we grabbed through our deck, choosing to discard the raid target Crollo into the sideline. Going to play a copy of Franklin, dropping Essil down by 500 BP, making her unable to block the Sphinx swinging in, which will hit an active trigger out of life. Deciding to play the Pakanoto on the front line, knowing that we're going to be having to block out some cards here with a Raid Jinwoo in our opponent's hand, as we see the 4-cost raid being dropped on the field, which allows our opponent to draw and discard and then grab one back from the sideline. They're going to grab the Esso, and then Esso, of course, will be able to draw and discard, sending the Esso right back into the sideline. Generating 4 energy is going to be playing a copy of Sung Il Hwan on the front line, which is going to be very tough for our Phantom Troupe deck. It is a 4,000 double blocker, so until we find a way to out that, we're not going to really be able to swing aggressively with our smaller bodies. Pakanoto, of course, will be able to block, and then we'll be able to draw a card off her ability when sideline. Moving the Bonolanov and Cortopia up to the front line as we're generating 4 energy, we can now play a little bit more aggressively. Going to play a copy of Shalnark on our front line, able to play back any of our troop members back from the sideline. We're going to go for Shizuku, allowing us to draw a card. We are generating 5 energy, but like I said earlier, we're probably not going to be playing Hisoka in this instance, as instead we're going to be raiding a Crollo, which will copy the ability of one of our troop members on the field, and we do have a lot of options. We can drop some BP or draw cards. Instead, we're going for the swapping ability of the Bonolanov and Cortopia, and then raiding another Crollo, putting the Shalnark safely on our back line. We're going to play a Pakanoto back from our sideline instead, which she'll be sidelined at the end of the turn, meaning we'll be able to draw another card. Swinging through, and we'll hit another raid out of life on double impact, and of course with a 4,000 double blocker on the front line, nothing else between Bonolanov and Cortopia and Finks is going to be able to get through here. Both of our cards getting sidelined off of the Shalnark ability means that we're able to draw a card off the Pakanoto's effect, and we're up quickly here, 5 life to 3. Fortunately, we've given our opponent a lot of advantage here as the first Raid Jinwoo is being played, which will force us to block this turn. The problem is, at least for our opponent, that we're not going to be blocking with a lot of really powerful cards, as we have a lot of smaller BPs on our front line that'll be easily able to tank a shot. You're going to see the force block being attacking, and then the Finks will be forced to block it. Opponent will be able to grab an SL back from their sideline and immediately pitch off a Cha into the sideline off of its ability. Swinging in with the other Jinwoo, which will draw and discard, and our opponent sitting at now 13 cards in the sideline will be able to be 5,000 BP. We hit an active trigger out of life, which the Esso will be blocked by the Bonolanov and Cortopia, and the Sung Il Hwan will be dropped by the newly boosted Raid Crollo. So quite a big swing for the mill deck here after this last turn. They now have a full front line and essentially 5 blockers on the front line, 3 with 4,000 and 1 with 2,000. Play a copy of Franklin, which will drop everything by 500. Again, generating 5 energy, but no Hisoka is going to be coming here. We're going to play a copy of Skill Hunter Bandage Secret, going after the Sung Il Hwan here to drop it by 3,000 BP. Sitting at now just 500 BP after the Franklin's been played this turn, so we really can just out it by choosing its ability to copy the Franklin's ability to make it lose its fast 500 and be sidelined due to game mechanics, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our last action here to play a Cortopia on the front line, which will reveal a Crollo in our hand, stacking the Raid Crollo that we have in our sideline back on the top of the deck. Impact will be able to swing through, and we hit a get trigger, so not exactly the most detrimental for us to just deal 1 damage here, and again, up 4 life to 2 here. We're in a pretty comfortable position, as we are no longer forced to block the Raid Jinwoo, and he does not have impact as our opponent is sitting at just 14 cards. The choices here now for our opponent as to how aggressively they want to go, starting things off with an Elixir of Life. It'll grab back an SL from the sideline, then drawing a card off the Elixir, and then the SL effect resolves to draw and discard as well, pitching a Han Song-yi. I'm going to play a copy of I Want to Catch Up to Him, which is essentially Graceful Charity in the game of Union Arena. You draw 3 cards from your deck, then pitch 2 cards into your sideline. It's going to be a Raid Jinwoo and a Cha into the sideline, which should essentially put our opponent at now 18 cards into their sideline. Then on a rise to make it 19, just need 1 more card into the sideline to give the Raid Jinwoo the ability of Impact. The The choices is what's going to be to get to that 20th card in the sideline. Will it be a draw discard? Instead, going to be a mutilation to take care of our Crollo, put him at 20 cards into the sideline. They are generating 5 energy here, which would be very aggressive if they have another raid Jinwoo in the hand. And 20 cards in the sideline as we're forced to block. Instead, going to play a Han Song-yi on the front line, which will give a BP boost to the Essel, putting her at 3,000, so she can hit over basically anything. The Jinwoo will attack and will be hit into a special, which will take care of the other raid Jinwoo, and Essel being 3,000 BP will be able to get through. Of course, we hit an active trigger when all the attacking is done. Very fortuitous special to hit out of life, as it's been the case for Phantom Troupe here, bailed out by the special quite a few times in our matchups today. We're going to move Shalnark up to the front line, then I'm going to play a Crollo on the energy line and raiding a Crollo to copy the ability of any one of our troop members. Potentially going for the Shalnark here. We're not really seeing anything in the sideline we want. Instead, we'll go after the Franklin to make this Han Song-yi lose her last 500 BP, the sideline under the game rule. Essel will block the first attack for Korotopy. Crollo will swing in with impact and an active trigger, which will put the Essel back up, and nothing else will be able to get through our opponent on 1 life. Here, it is all or nothing here to try and get through our last 2 life. See a raid Jinwoo being played, forcing us to block this turn with the ability of impact. Then a Demon's Castle being played. Another Arise to restand, and then a Jinwoo. And then another raid Jinwoo, so it is double mandatory block, both with impact. First one will attack, be blocked out by the Korotopy. Impact will swing in after the Cha has been played back from our opponent's sideline due to the Jinwoo's ability. And we do hit a very fortuitous special to take care of the other force blocking impact. Jinwoo, of course, will be able to attack here, and we're going to be forced to block out a lot of these attacks. We're going to block with Shalnark. Cha can be blocked by the Crollo, so we have to block with Bonolanov and Korotopy, and Essel won't get through. And very similar to Game 1, it is just 1 impact away from sealing the deal. Playing a Crollo here, looking through our deck to try and find anything here to extend our plays, but it's not really necessary. Draw into another raid Crollo, play him to the front line, swinging in with impact, and that's Game 3. So here we are after our randomly generated 3-round tournament, and honestly, I am very satisfied with the results. I definitely did not expect this deck to go 2-1, and especially to take some games against some very powerful decks. With the deck list and the games out of the way, it's time to break down the objective pros and cons of the deck, starting, of course, with the pros. First, it is a very small deck. Only needing to get up to a maximum of 4 required energy to do a lot of your plays means you don't have to invest a lot of your resources into establishing a board. Yes, you can get up to 5 required energy, but it's not necessary for the deck to function, and it means you can swing very aggressively earlier on and not really have to worry about any repercussions. Second, it has incredible searching capabilities. Thanks to the new support in Volume 2, the deck essentially is playing 7 copies of the same card in the 2-cost color Crollo, and it lets you find the right card you're looking for almost every time. It's not completely out of the question to see every card in your deck in the game because the deck has that capability. Third, the strategy is ever-changing. With so many different troop members in the deck, all with different abilities, you never really limited to what you can do. Instead of your deck having a clear-cut strategy like establishing names or generating certain energy, Phantom Troupe isn't limited to any singular strategy, making it very difficult for your opponent to figure out the best way to play around your deck. And now, of course, for the cons. First, it is too reliant on Crollo. Thanks to the lore of the Hunter x Hunter anime, we know that the troop revolves a lot around Crollo, and that point is really exemplified in this deck. Crollo is the only raid in the deck, and because of that, everything revolves around making sure you can find him. True, the troop can do things on their own, but their effects are only useful on the turn they're played. Without Crollo to copy the abilities, you're essentially playing the deck of cards that doesn't really pose a threat after the turn they're played. Second, it doesn't have great removal. Normally, decks get a removal card, typically in a special trigger, that can take care of cards with 5,000 BP, no problem, but Phantom Troupe wasn't so lucky. In order to outbig cards like the Lancelot that we saw back in Game 2, the deck is forced to use multiple cards to achieve that feat, whereas other decks are able to do it with just a simple activation of a special or an ability on another card. Third, the deck requires a certain mindset to play well. Similar to what I said back in the Zolik family deck discussion, Phantom Troupe requires that you know exactly what you want to do for your turn. The more troop members you have established on your board, the more options you have. However, that can end up being a problem if you don't know exactly what needs to be done to get the most advantage. You have to constantly ask yourself, is this the right time to play this character? Is this the right time to draw an extra card, etc., etc.? It's another deck that requires a lot of practice to truly be good at, and unfortunately, I'm just not so sure it's worth it. Overall, I really did enjoy playing through this deck. It surprised me immensely as to how well it did, and the best part about it is it's so customizable that you can do so many different things with it. Obviously, for this deck, we didn't exactly go for the more power-heavy option, instead went for speed, but if you want to, you can play cards such as the Uvogin, or the Phaeton, or even the 6/2 Hisoka if you truly feel like it. The deck is truly customizable, and I really hope you give this deck a try for yourself. If you enjoyed the video at any point, please leave a like and a comment down below as to the changes you might make for your own Phantom Troupe deck. Subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back and enjoying the content, and we'll see you again soon for another Union Arena deck discussion video.